One, two, three. There we go. Okay, welcome to another episode of DNN Community Hangout. I'm Joe Brinkman.
And I'm Will Stroll. Nice to have everybody around again.
Yes, definitely good to see everyone back from the holidays. Well, except for some of our European friends who may still have another couple of weeks to go, but for the most part, people are back.
Yeah. So how was your holiday, Joe?
Not nearly as nice as other people I know who were in Hawaii, I think, for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Do I look a little more tan? Yeah. Wasn't bad at all. Winter in Hawaii it doesn't suck.
For sure. For sure. And I can't believe you didn't take me with you this year, Will.
Well, you've been there before, so.
Fair enough. But, yeah, well, we did have some other work going on for DNN, so I guess it was good that I was back here and actually getting real work done. So.
Oh, I got real work done. I was planning where I'm going to move next. Anyhow, so welcome everybody to the January Hangout. It's a little bit later this month, specifically because of the very difficult Hawaii trip. But other than that, we do have another show next month. We're going to be talking about Azure, so stay tuned next month for that episode. And if you want to present at any future episode, please let us know. We'd be happy to have you. So you can do any comments throughout the show. Just hashtag it DNN Hangout, and we'll see it in Twitter, or you can put it in the show comments down below the video if you're on the webpage. And we'll go ahead and respond to those questions to the appropriate person, or if you want to, if that's how you're trying to get a hold of us for being a speaker, that's a great way too. To that, we are at the point where I guess we should be talking about our new presenters. So we have two presenters with us this month, and if you haven't seen them yet or seen their avatars, these are probably two of the more handsome guys in Canada, as Joe would say. Those look like some professional photos for sure. Well, we have the Lopez brothers with us from innosoftware.net, and that's Aaron and Dylan. And we've got a little feedback there. There we go. And if you don't recognize Aaron, you might have seen him a few years ago as having a submission in the one of our superfan contests. It was a pretty good one. It was almost like a DNN commercial. He was sleepwalking, and all of a sudden, like this little ending came up. It was pretty good. I liked it a lot. But welcome, guys. Welcome to the show, Aaron, Dylan.
Yeah, hello. Thank you. Hello. Thanks for reminding them about my submission as well. that was the first DNN Superfan contest.
Yeah, first. Yeah, that was good. It was good, and I for one definitely enjoyed that video. So why don't you each tell us about yourself? How you got involved with DNN, what you do, how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing we should probably answer is a question that's probably on everyone's mind, and the answer is no. Dylan and I are not twins.
Yeah, we get that.
Between us, and yes, we do realize our voices sound exactly the same. But it's kind of a funny thing because in our company, we are kind of the both sides of the same coin in a way, in that I'm a front-end developer, and Dylan works on module development on the servers and whatnot. And so I started in 2006 in DNN, and so I think that was around DNN 4.9 or something like that. It was actually with Lance Long of Sprite New Media. You've probably seen around on Twitter, and yeah, so he introduced me to DNN in 2006, and it's
I haven't seen that name in forever.
Yeah, and so that's where I started, and then Dylan can tell you about himself, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
At the time, I was doing some basically contract development and ramping up to, well, basically start doing the services full time. And as Aaron mentioned earlier, we really are sort of the two sides to a coin. Our skills really directly complemented each other. And I knew about DNN as well from work I had previously in the enterprise world. And when Lance introduced me to it more closely, and Aaron was showing me what he was up to with it, I loved .NET, And to see the CMS be so far even back then, I saw the potential with modules and whatnot. And yeah, Aaron and I teamed up and basically started down that path. And it was probably not even a year before we went exclusive. DNN, dumped all the lamp stack stuff that we're supporting. It was kind of fun playing with Joomlas and whatnot. But after a bit, we just went whole hog, so to speak. So I guess it's now been most of 10 years, and we've been doing this exclusively.
Well, that's pretty interesting, because I don't think you have hogs in Canada, so it's a pretty good term to use up there. So what made you guys choose to dump the lamp stack in favor of DNN?
I would say the ability to specialize. I don't know if you agree with that, Aaron. It's mostly that we're not huge. At least with our extended team, we're kind of more capable. But we realized we still had to focus as a company, and I think a big part of it was really to just be able to be completely specialized, and you get very good at one thing as opposed to be kind of a generalist, which means that we compete poorly at a lot of things instead of competing really hard in one area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think people on the other side of the world, it would probably, and not physically, I'm just the PHP world, they probably would have a similar statement of saying something to the effect of, we want to specialize and we chose, I don't know, let's say Joomla, but what made you choose the .NET stack and DNN specifically? Were there any specific types of potential or features that you like to enjoy, or maybe it's a tool set?
Aaron, do you want to speak to that first, or I could answer? Because I have my perspective from the server side, and Aaron would have his perspective from the front-end development. From a server-side perspective, it was the way .NET Nuke already had a clear vision on things like modules and providers and more formalized ways to integrate. Because the code mess you get with some of the lamp stack products, and I'm sure there's some people out there who manage it, I'm sure, better than perhaps I would have been able to. But I found personally you had a lot of modules stepping over other modules, not a formal installation path, just that lack of vision when it came to ongoing maintenance and the support and upgradability and stuff like that. I felt .NET Nuke was really looking to make it so that their vendor community could really bolt on to the thing formally, following DNN standards and whatnot, and not just have a bit of a wild west when it came to integrating additional products or even the upgrading, like where I can count on a deprecated method to still at least function so that my modules won't break. It was largely that, and just having a fandom for .NET. I've loved .NET for such a long time. And to see it was clearly the standout platform built on .NET. It was nothing even worth looking at comparing, alternatives. So for me, it was pretty obvious when it came to integration and customization.
It's interesting that you talk about that, Dylan, because one of the things early on that we tried to build into the platform was this modularity, the ability to distribute or build and distribute binary packages, if you will, of extensions for the platform. And we really took a lot of that from what .NET was doing and what Microsoft had done for a long time with component vendors, right? And we saw the same need for our platform as well. So it's interesting that's the item that you sort of gravitated towards as a motivator for you.
Yeah, if you're going to own the relationship with your clients and you have to upgrade them and keep your modules moving forward, I mean, that's a really fundamental part. It's long vision, but it's really saved us in a number of instances because of the fact that DNN respects upgrade pathing and has been community driven since as far as I can remember. Yeah, Aaron. So I don't know if I'm sure I didn't cover anything with the skinning and whatnot, but your perspective would be kind of different than mine, I imagine, for why you were drawn to it.
Yeah, for skinning, I mean, I've worked in WordPress before, and I know a lot of those ones you have to know some PHP and you have to work within scripts and stuff like that. And I never liked that. I love the ability to drag a skin object onto a page, and so that sort of separation I really enjoyed, and being able to just put attributes onto things, and so that was a big thing for me. Absolutely.
So, do you, when you design, Aaron, are you using Visual Studio or are you using Dreamweaver or something else?
I actually use Dreamweaver.
Okay.
Yeah. So my typical setup is I use Dreamweaver and then I just upload to server.
Okay. Yeah, that was a standard approach for what, 2 decades, I guess. It still works.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yep. Yep. Cool. So your company, innosoftware.net, what do you guys do, and what can you do for people that might be watching?
I'd say that our focus, and it sort of developed over time, but I'd say the last half of the existence of the company has been very, we tend to use the term valet type of service, like more like, the way someone would want to work with their web, where they care about their business needs, but they really don't want self-management tools. They're not interested in a control panel. Like, we even offer hosting, for example, where we don't give you a Plus control panel or any kind of control panel. I mean, we'll establish FTP if you need, but for the most part, we sort of just took everything over for people so they could hand off and then just make the calls on the business side, because that's where we feel clients' strengths should be, is their business model itself, and not have to learn technologies like the web, aside from what they need to know to make decisions. So we really focused on a lot of custom solutions and kind of extending people's teams, and that became more and more our specialty, where we worked for a number of large kind of corporate entities that had standardized on DNN, but we would adopt their tools, understand how to use their agile system, or do everything with collaboration and be very much like a virtual office extension. And we take that approach even if it's, a one-off type of retail situation, that we assume they're going to want to come back. We're assuming that they need upgrading over the long term, and we very much just like to take everything out of their hands, do it for them, and hand it back in that sense. It allows people to focus. So I would say we're a DNN vendor, but with very much a focus on curated long-term relationships, where we really extend someone's team so they can have like web professionals who do this full-time and have been for a long time, but not have to like necessarily have 2 full-time staff on, because there's companies in that magic spot where they need you often but not every day. So that's kind of where we ended up heading, and we've done a lot of proprietary work for nonprofits. And as I mentioned earlier, extending corporate teams that need their CMSs managed, basically like intranets or large web properties. Yeah. In fact, Lance and Scott McCulloch, of course from Spry New Media and Ventrian, they do some of that type of work. And without giving too many client details, we're currently paired with them on managing some stuff as well. So we just have a lot of experience getting brought in a contract format, but with the expectation that we're not the in and out contractors that you don't see after the year you've had them.
Yeah. People certainly don't love those.
Yeah, because they only get just far enough to spend a lot of money, and then when they're all used to your environment, they're not available to you, right? And we like to get used to someone's environment so that we can operate within their team, but then still be there on a regular basis. And we often offer SLAs so that they can have a guaranteed service level, despite not having full-time staff. They know their turnaround times will be within X days for X types of, emergencies and stuff. So yeah, that sums us up, I think, for the most part.
Nice. It sounds like you're filling a niche, and it sounds like some of it, you might be able to categorize it as maybe process management or process automation.
To some extent, I mean, for automating web-related processes, whether it be maintenance or marketing, and yeah, just to have that kind of reliable go-to team if something goes down, or like, for example, we had those spam regs where DNN needed upgrading and whatnot. We're so familiar with it, and being that we manage so many client sites, we can do it really easily, whereas they'd have to go through that huge learning curve of, okay, what's going on? How is this a threat? How do we cope with it? We can say, oh, we've seen it a million times. We'll deal with it. They don't even notice. Sometimes, clients will have been saved from a problem because we dealt with it before they even realized it existed as a part of their maintenance or SLA. So yeah, it is a niche for sure, and we've enjoyed it. Yeah, we like being specialists for a smaller group of clients as opposed to serving kind of a mass audience.
Nice.
Yeah.
Joe, did you have any additional questions for Aaron or Dylan?
No, I think we'll save them when we get into some of the content. I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about today, so
Yep.
I'm definitely interested to hear what they have to talk about.
Awesome. So that would bring us to our news section, and if we had a jingle, we would be playing that right now. All right. So I don't know about you, Joe. I have plenty of things I found. I didn't think a lot happened over the last month, but people been busy. That's for sure. So one of the first things I'd like to call out is thanksean.org. I don't know if you guys have heard about this site, but Timo, and I'm going to get his last name wrong, I'm sure, but Timo Brumelhoff, he put together a really nice site that he released on the anniversary. I think it was 11 or 12 now. Jeez, anniversary for the original release of DNN, and so basically it's a website where you can thank Sean by leaving a comment, and so it's a really nice thing, and so I guess that was a nice Christmas present to Sean. So if anybody watching or anybody here, if you'd like to leave a thank you note to Sean, feel free to do so there. Something else I have. There's something coming in March. Can anybody guess what that is?
No.
No. DNN 7 book. So it's been a long time. We got a DNN 7 book coming. It's due out in March. So hopefully that still makes it. Folks like myself, they're depending on us for that to get our work back to them. But the interesting thing is the author list is quite long. There's 14 authors for this book. It's pretty big. Yeah, DNN's that big now. You need a lot of authors, and so it's pretty cool. And it's nice to see some new names in the author list, including like Ralph Williams and Nathan Rover, Clint Patterson. Israel Martinez, that's another one. So some Peter Donker. I don't think he was in the book before either. There's some good names in this list, so it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to that one. And you can buy that now on Amazon if you want, so you can pre-order it, so it's already available to you. Something that I attended, I don't know, did anybody here attend the DNN Sharp webinar about make your DNN site 10 times faster?
10 times.
It was an interesting webinar. Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting webinar. There's been quite a bit of chatter afterwards to talk about how real the scenario is, or what the tweaks might have been or should be, and things like that. But overall, I think it was a great kind of study to figure out some ways to get DNN even faster than it is. That's one. No matter how fast we make it, that's always one of the chief complaints is DNN is slow, and so it's very good to have that topic out there for discussion. Something that's coming to the DNN Connect group should be by next month is there's going to be an iPhone and Android app for DNN Connect, so you can stay connected to that website on your phone. So all the content and activity that happens there, you'll be able to keep track of it. And that's built by our friends at Solero. I think they're based out of the UK. Let's see here. What else I got? Oh, training working group. I still want more volunteers to help me and the rest of my team to build more training materials and get more events out there. So if you're interested in that, ring me up on maybe Twitter, or you can email me at will.stroll@gmail.com. Some other stuff is there's some interesting blogs out there. One of the ones I'd like to call out first is Beth and Joe both had a great blog about participation. You want to talk about that, Joe?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really were pushing in the fourth quarter this last year was about revitalizing the DNN community. One of the areas that we focused on a lot in the fall was getting more people active and contributing code, contributing to building the platform. We really want people to fundamentally understand that this is a partnership between DNN Corp and our community. So we really have been focusing on that. But you're going to see us here in this first quarter start expanding beyond just code contributions, starting to work more with Will and his team, or in the training team, around documentation and around other aspects of how we participate in the DNN community. I think we'll even be creating some new teams. There's a lot going on in 2015, and participation is really the key to making all that stuff work. So that's a big topic and something that's really close to my heart at this point.
Yeah, those are some good blog posts. So everybody should read those to figure out how they can fit in the participation, because you don't have to necessarily be a developer or the wizard in any particular area. Everybody has a way they can contribute. So the more the merrier, then the better the product will be.
It was interesting that you mentioned that, Will, because I'm even seeing people who had been key players in the community who had moved on to some other things the last couple of years and starting to see some interest in coming back and doing more work in the community. A couple of them that I know have been busy with other stuff recently, but Chris Hammond is definitely stepping back in. Scott Wilhite, who has been sort of off doing some other stuff this last year, he's ready to get back and get engaged. In fact, he's one of the authors on the new DNN 7 book. So definitely we're starting to see some other people come back, get re-engaged with the community, and that is awesome to see.
Yeah, definitely. So some other things that I noticed that are newsworthy is there's a great blog on the DNN Store blog, which people forget is there. I forget it's there sometimes, but there's a lot of good things in there. There was a recent vendor interview with Smith Consulting. I personally have never met that guy, so it was cool to kind of see him and hear about him, and that was done by our last person we interviewed, Adderson, and so I think he has more of those coming. There's a great blog post by Ash about disabling the user search crawling. So check that out if you want to prevent user profiles from being indexed. Daniel Metler continues his barrage on Web API and AngularJS. They're all great articles. The DNN Con sessions, I mentioned this last episode, but it's worth mentioning again. That content is out there as well. So check out the DNN Software blog, the DNN Connect blog, and the DNN Store blog. There's lots of great information there. And what you just mentioned, Joe, is a great segue into some of the Forge releases, because Chris Hammond, just had 2 releases over the last month. One is his Hammer Flex skin, and then he also updated his Chrisstock module template, so that Visual Studio template, to include skins. So that's pretty cool. I haven't tried it yet myself, but it's about time that kind of support got out there. So that's pretty neat. 2 Sexy Content had a release, video library, and DNN site gallery. So there's 2 kind of visual listings for content. One done by Jeff Barlow and one by our founder Sean Walker. Let's see here. What else we got? There's an interesting tool called the Data Exporter that was released in the Forge as well. So you can export all various types of data from your DNN site using that. We got Events module had a release, Portal Keeper, and one of the last ones I mentioned is PowerShell scripts for DNN maintenance. So that's an interesting project out there to help with the daily DNN management. There's a bunch of PowerShell scripts that help with that. But another thing is Brian Dukes. Oh boy, he released. It looks like 100. I know it's not 100, but it looks like he released a ton of JavaScript extensions. So take a look for those on the Forge. You can install those as first-level citizens if you or first-class citizens rather, if you haven't heard of that before. So that's pretty cool. That's all I have on the Forge front and the blog front.
I think there was also in there a DNN blog update, or it may have been just before last episode, but definitely in the last month or 2.
Yeah, I missed that one. So it might have needed to be in the last list, or it was right on that cusp where I just missed it in my updates. Yeah, I did see that. Now that you remind me, I did see that mentioned, especially on Facebook a lot. DNN blog had a release. That's very important. That's a good module.
Yeah, Peter was actually very active in coding in December and November. I know blog was out, and Peter actually did a lot of work for the 7.4.0 release, which we're getting ready to come out with later this month. So that's the only reason I knew it, because I knew Peter had been doing a lot of work on a lot of different things. And
yeah, for being on holiday, as they call it, there's a lot of the Europeans. They did a lot of work on DNN over the past handful of weeks. So let's see here. So the store. So there was a ton of sales that happened in December. So if you did not take advantage of the sales that happened, you missed out on saving a ton of money. I was looking through a lot of the announcements that happened over the last month, and a lot of people had reduced prices in honor of the holidays. So if you missed out, you missed out. Some releases that happened recently, and there's probably a lot more, but these are the only ones I saw announcements for. RevIndex Storefront had a release. It looks like a good one because it looks like you can do a marketplace with their module now, so that's pretty cool. There's not many tools out there in general for that, much less in DNN. Let's see, Armand Datima, or otherwise known as Nukiko, he just released an Aura theme. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's a really good-looking skin. But we always see great-looking stuff out of him. And Anya Tech, they continue to have many releases. But the cool thing about the store news is, and this is my almost my last bit of news, is that there was a recent newsletter that said the top skins and modules, or excuse me, top themes and modules for 2014, and I didn't expect to see that in my inbox when I came back from my torturous holiday, but it was really cool to see that list. And I'll start with the themes. There was a top 5. I'll just go for the top 3 to save some time here. But can anybody guess what the number 1 was for skins or for themes, rather? Yeah, that's gonna be tough.
Hammerflex.
No, but I think that is available in the store. I'm not certain.
It is.
No. What's that?
Moose by Nukiko.
Oh, no.
Porto.
But yes, very well done. Yes, Porto, responsive theme by Mandeep. So that was the number 1 skin for 2014. The next 2 have very creative names. So the next one is responsive theme 033. By DNN Go. And then the next one after that was generic responsive theme by Websites Created. So that's rounds out your top 3 for skins, or for themes rather.
That's my naming convention.
I looked at the generic skin, and that's actually, one of the things that I've been seeing a lot more with skins in the store and themes in the store is a lot more customization that you can do once you install the skin. So they're not. It used to be that we had a lot of themes that you had the red version, the blue version, the green version, the orange version, 52 different versions. It was the same thing. They changed some CSS color tags and called it a new skin color. And now people have gotten really good about, just throw on a control bar panel on the side and let people customize a single skin to the exact color that they want, throw in some different background imagery and things like that. And so even though it says it's generic, it actually has quite a bit of customization that you can make it look the way you want it to look with very little effort.
Yeah, then it's awesome. Maybe no surprise that everyone's buying it then, because that really is where some skins fall short, is that ability to tailor it to the actual content of the site and the business. So it seems they're onto something. Hopefully all skin developers will keep following suit with that pattern to be able to adjust for your business.
Well, and the other thing too is that I think our theming designers are getting much better about the marketing side of building themes. You start looking at the demo sites that they do and the content that they create just to build up a demo of a theme, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and thought to doing that. If you've ever built one yourself and your name's not Aaron Lopez, it probably is a little bit difficult for you. Because there's a lot of little details that you have to get into, as I'm sure Aaron will talk about later. What's the right font, and how are you doing on your H1 through H6 and paragraphs, and all the different levels of detail that it takes to build a really good quality theme. And I think you're seeing our designers now get much, much better at that.
Yeah, I think the next stage that I'd like to see out of our designers in our ecosystem is to start to see their themes show up in theme marketplaces outside the DNN to get some more awareness for the platform. That's, I think, one of our major areas of lacking for designers overall. All right, so that leaves us at modules, and then we'll get started. We're a little bit over time for our schedule. Top modules. Anybody guess what the number 1 module is for 2014?
Action forms, yeah.
Oh, that's a great guess. They came in at number 4, or wait, 5? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 5.
Dynamic forms?
No, that's number 4. Yeah. You guys sure know your modules, though.
URL adapter, DNN Sharp's URL adapter.
No, that did not make the top 6.
Didn't make the list.
No, not well. I mean, I'm sure it's on the list.
Oh, it's got to be a Mandeep's product.
It's Mandeep's, yeah.
It's got to
Live
be
Slider.
Mandeep. Yeah.
Actually,
Live content.
I don't see his stuff on the top 6 here.
Oh.
The number 1 module for 2014, Easy DNN News.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's popular.
Yeah. I'm not going to say the next one. Can you guys say what number 2 is?
I don't know.
Rev Index.
Oh, yeah.
I was very like, this is why this news was a little bit close to my heart. I was like, oh, look in the inbox, the number 2 module for the year, Hotcakes Commerce, yay! So that was pretty cool.
It's orange.
Orange, you glad. So the number 3 is another Easy DNN module. It's Easy DNN Gallery. So that rounds up the top 3 there. So, but now we went through all the top 5s. So that's pretty cool.
It is interesting to see how some of these vendors, they move up for quite a while, and then we keep getting new vendors come in. I know for a long time that that Kelly Ford's stuff was always at the top, if not number 1, number 2, or number 3. And it's nice to see some new blood come in. I know Kelly Ford's stuff is still doing very well in the marketplace. So, but seeing some new people come in, it's good to see.
Yep. The only last thing I have, and if you guys have anything else, feel free to chime in. But the only other thing I found interesting, or this is kind of funny news, is I just wanted to congratulate Oliver Hine for finally populating his home office with furniture. So congratulations, Oliver. Now, before we get to you guys, there was a question that came in over this time, and Hans, great. Hans guessed the module. But Clint Patterson, he would like to know, when will we see a Lopez brother at DNN Con?
Oh, that's a good question. When's
That's something we wanted to go to. Yeah, when's the next one?
Well, that's a great thing to... Go ahead.
I tried to go to DNN Connect, but it was full. But I'd love to go to DNN Con.
Yeah, DNN Connect was amazing. So not as amazing as Hawaii, but it was still darned amazing. So that's a good segue to talk about that there is a next DNN Connect, and I did not write down when it's happening, unfortunately, but it's happening this spring. Joe, do you have that information?
Yeah, in May. I don't have the exact dates ahead of me, but it's endish of May. I want to say the last week or last 2 weeks in May.
Yeah, and they're already looking for sponsors, and I think they're looking for speakers already as well, but I don't think the speaker call is formal yet.
Yeah, I think the speaker call is going to open up end of the month, and then registrations. They still haven't finalized venues. That won't happen until after we finish getting all the sponsors, or the first wave of sponsors in. So they're still working to make sure we can lock down the venue and get some of the background stuff, but you should start seeing more in the next couple of weeks. Call for speakers will go out. Registration will open up here in February-ish. So definitely keep an eye open for that. Yeah,
and as far as DNN events, that's one of my favorite events I've been to. Those guys know how to put on an event. They're very passionate about DNN, and there's lots of great people out there in Europe, and it doesn't hurt that it's going to be in France. So
the south of France in springtime. So yeah, that's probably not a bad choice of venue there.
Yeah. All right. Did you guys have any news that you wanted to contribute? Anybody?
No, I'm excited about the 7.4 release, but that's already been mentioned. I know that at least I last heard CK Editor was in that build. And,
yeah. So let me
highlight
that release that's coming up since we're on that topic. So we do have 7.4.0 that's coming out in 2 weeks, and unfortunately, CK Editor, we've got a good start on CK Editor, but it's not quite ready to go in the build package yet. So we've got a little bit more work to do on that to get that cleaned up and ready to go. I expect that'll get released around the same time, or maybe a couple of weeks afterwards, so it'll be available for people to download and install. It is a new version or a new fork off of the old CK editor that was available, and will be released under DNN Connect's repository. But at the same time, we've also got commercial releases of the new Evoke Content 8.0, as well as the social product. So lots of new stuff coming from DNN Corp in terms of our commercial products, along with the open source platform. And in fact, there is a launch event scheduled for January 27th, and all send you over for the show notes the link to that. But if you go to dnnsoftware.com, you can sign up for that webinar today. And there are lots of great things coming in that release. And one of the things that I'm really excited about in our commercial products, not because it's our commercial products per se, but because there are a lot of things that we're doing in the commercial products which are going to trickle down to the open source product. In other words, we spend a lot of time and effort getting things perfected in that environment, and then we figure out what makes sense and contribute it to the core platform. So there are a lot of capability or a lot of techniques that we're using there that are going to be coming over to the core platform. And in fact, in the 7.4 release, we have a brand new workflow and versioning API in the core platform. So that's I'm going to talk about that a little bit more tonight at the QueenCity.net Nuke user group. So.
Ooh, another event. Nice. All right. So at this point, I guess we're a little over time, so sorry about that, guys. But we're going to move over. DNN Diva responded to Clint Patterson's question, and she says, you know, it'd be great to see you guys at an event, if only for the eye candy. So I'm going to let the eye candy take the show, so that way we don't keep anybody from seeing you guys at this point. So Aaron, why don't you show us some stuff about beautiful DNN sites?
Yeah, I'd love to. All right, so I guess I'll just share my screen. So I'd just like to show you, to start off, with a website that I think looks really good, and I think you guys would maybe start as a good starting point for a DNN site. No, I'm just kidding. That's ridiculous. But yeah, my presentation is about, you know, I know we talked about themes, but my presentation is more about custom skins, because a lot of what I do all day to day for Inno is responsive DNN websites, and so it's for small, medium-sized businesses mostly, and a lot of them are, or all of them are responsive, and so I work with a web designer. We have a partnership with a web designer, and you know, all of the websites that come in are responsive websites. So the first and foremost thing that I'd like to talk about is just getting a web designer. It seems so obvious, but a lot of the time I see things, you know, you see it in every CMS, but people don't have a web designer, and they'll just they'll try to hack together something on their own, or you know, maybe they're a front-end developer or they're a programmer, and they'll just try to hack something together, and you end up with things like the ugliest website, or you have something that looks like the CMS that it's built on. And it's very, very important, especially for our company, and I'm sure everyone else's, is that when you're building a website for a company called Micron Controls, or you know, West Coast Pilates, or whatever you're building, your stakeholder, your client, and in turn your designer, they're focusing on the branding and the usability and you know, their content. And so extremely important to get a web designer, because they're also going to push your skills. I find is that when you're given a really nice design that looks like this in Photoshop, it defines what the content is, and it defines how you're eventually going to code it. And so when I look at something like this is the home page. And so some of the content's a little bit different than the subpage, but it tells me some of the basic rules and what kind of headings I'm going to have to use and what the colors are right in there. And so it's a very good starting point to have just a really nice design. And so it's kind of a funny, obvious thing, but it's really half the battle. So I'm usually given something like this, which is a large screen ESD. This is just the home page, but I'm usually given a default page or an interior page design. It gives me a lot of cues to their brand colors and the fonts and whatnot. So starting from there, I use Bootstrap and less files. So I'll just show you quickly the end result, and then I'll get into some of the code specifically. So as I scroll down, you see I've got a sticky header, sticky navigation, some animation when I get to the logo. Scrolling down, you even have some animations with the truck, just some fun stuff. No animated GIFs, but this will have to do. And then even on the button hovers, they have a nice CSS3 fade effect. And so a lot of that stuff, I didn't really do it on my own. It was dictated by a design. The design sort of indicated this is how it's going to look, and it indicates how it's going to work, and how it works is based on code, and the CSS and the HTML, and even the menu is what's called pushy nav. So that's a free jQuery navigation you can just get online. So usually in this particular case, it just pops out from the left, but usually it actually will push the content to the right. But in this one, I wanted a slightly different design. So without further ado, let's jump into some code. So my folder structure looks kind of like this. So this would be your portal, Bootstrap DNN Starter, and then your skins folder, and then I've called this one Hangout. Just to quickly go over, some of the most common things that I do is I have, so your skin file, and also a default.ascx file. And I'll just show you Micron Control's default.ascx file. That looks like this. So I have a header and a footer that loads. So because it's a reusable part of the skin. So for the sub pages, if I go to, let's go to About Us, the header and the footer are more or less the same. And so it's really, really good to just constantly have just good logical folder separation with your includes. It's a good starting point. I have some CSS file just for extra things, but skin is typically where everything goes. I have a JS folder as well for any of my skin.js for sticky navigations and things like that, sticky headers and navigations. And just going into the header file, this is the Micron Control header, where I put all my code. Let's see. And I'll show you just a quick little, actually before we get into the code, one of the big things that I do, this is the very first step for HTML templates, is I will meticulously write the HTML and CSS before I even do anything in DNN. So moving to my default.html file. I think I've got this somewhere. So I will take my, I'll have my PSD, and then just locally, I write all the HTML and CSS directly in here. I don't even think about DNN at all, because I know that there's a lot of considerations you have to have for default.css, the actual DNN file. I know that there's modules you have to consider and how jQuery is loaded. But before I even get to that, I just focus directly on here. And I would highly suggest using Bootstrap and less, because it gives you just really fine-tuned control over over your layouts and whatnot, especially when it comes to responsive design. If you are at Microcontrols, this is a responsive site, and so you need that extra fine-tuned control to adjust widths and font sizes and whatnot when you're at smaller screens. And so just to give you a brief overview of Bootstrap and less, I've got the typical container class and a row, and then for each column, just looking at just a generic template to start. Each section, I would actually, these are the columns basically. So I have a Bootstrap folder or file that loads layout. Let's go to Bootstrap. So this is my Bootstrap file that loads all the Bootstrap files. And you can use the Bootstrap, the distributed thing, but it's really heavy and it's really slow. And so what I do is I remove things that I don't use. So if I don't use those two, for example, when I save, it will automatically recompile. What's the message? Strap. Oh, I actually forgot to change something. But it will recompile the CSS file, and I aim the Bootstrap CSS file into skin.css. And so this is how to keep like a logical separation. So I have my layout and my nav. So if we're looking at something like the general layout, I've already written some code here. Actually, I think I have to quickly do this.
I thought we would have to have a speaker come from Australia to see a tool named Koala.
He's actually from China.
Yeah, the compiler is definitely useful for the maintenance of his CSS, being that, you know, it virtualizes a lot of the styles in a sense, so that the compiler can rewrite all the static elements of the output CSS.
Yep. So what I do is I compile it into skin.css. It's going to replace it. That's fine. Oh, no longer available. Sorry, guys. I think I renamed something by accident. Let's try this again. Okay. I think I forgot to change the name of something. But anyway,
Yeah, I think anyone who's ever used less or even SAAS, which is sort of another CSS compiler language, you know, it's kind of hard to go back to using straight CSS, you know, because
absolutely,
the things that those give you, the variables, and to be able to define a color in one spot and have it ripple throughout your entire style sheet is really just incredible to use that.
Yeah. So I'll gloss over this because I kind of forgot to change I changed the folder name by accident, so it's not really pointing the right direction.
You're sharing the files at the end anyway, are you not, Aaron?
Yep.
For anyone who's trying to get a jump start on using a compiler.
Yep. So this is also where I import things like fonts. You can do it through DNN CSS include, but I prefer to do it with fonts because it keeps it in one central place. It's also really important for the layout when you're doing a layout to make it as semantic as possible and to keep your classes very clean and simple. Because if you add things in with a distributed package like Bootstrap, you add things in like this, then suddenly you have that very specific thing. One, it looks ugly, but it's also attached to that logo now. And so if you go into your layout file and try to change the layout, it's going to be conflicting with this. So that's basically where I start, and I will meticulously build an entire layout, including content, including the JS and everything, just on locally before I even get to the skins. So that's really most of the battle, I think. DNN is really good nowadays. Like it was really, really hard earlier in the days because there would be normal classes that would modify the way your font sizes are, and there would be other things that you'd have to consider, sizing and colors. But nowadays it's actually really good. So there's a much cleaner separation, and there's also some tricks I'm going to show you how to bypass some of those. So a really neat thing that I like to use in my head file is I use 40 Fingers, which is by Timo. And so I keep all my register tags in the head file so I can reference it for any other skins that I need. And then in my I also have the 40 Fingers style helper, so it's a body class, so I can target specific pages. And I also remove Portal CSS because I don't use that one. This next one is really powerful, but it always depends on what you're doing. But remove CSS file, default.css, if the URL is not login, not register, or not user profile, and if the user mode is none. And so when I log in, where am I? To Micron controls, it finally loads the default CSS file. But when I'm logged out, it unloads it. And so when I'm for average user, you don't need that default CSS file unless you go to the login page, which is only the administrator anyways. So it's really, really, it's a really powerful module, and I think it's something you should probably look into. There's also a little helper thing I have with if the role is administrator or super user, add a little helper CSS file just for resetting some of the control panels and stuff. Another thing that I really emphasize, which I see a lot in a lot of skins, is using the proper DNN CSS include and JS includes, because it's really important for composite files and modification. If you do things like this, then it doesn't get composite files.
Yeah, it can blow it out a page pretty bad.
Yeah.
A lot of independent references to JavaScript.
Okay, I'm getting a message. So yeah, just the last thing I want to show you is using good modules. And that it's just such a simple thing, but using something like on the Contact Us page, we use DNN Sharp's action form. The nice thing is this uses Bootstraps. It uses Bootstrap, and I actually unload it, and so it inherits the styles that I've defined through my Bootstrap files. And so you can, it's not like you're overriding files, you're just using the core files. So that's my presentation. But I hope that gives you some insight, and I'm going to release the folder package and some more instructions on a blog post later, so you'll be able to crack it open and hopefully learn something from it.
So just real quick before we move on to the next presentation, is the one of the reasons that we asked you to the show is that not long ago you had released a site, and I looked at it and I was like, that ain't DNN. And I looked at the source and I was like, that's not DNN. And I looked a little bit closer. I was like, wait a minute, that really is DNN. And so these are a lot of really good ways to not just not make it look like DNN, both by the person looking at just the design, as a layman, but also as a designer who's looking at the source. But more importantly, all this ended up with a very clean design from a technical perspective, from a semantic perspective, and it was a fast site. So I was incredibly impressed at what you delivered to your clients, and so these are some really good tips that the rest of our ecosystem could use as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think Aaron has one with a video underlay in store coming up, and that'll be an interesting tweet, I'm sure. It will definitely get some attention because I saw it. I've got the sneak preview, and it's another one of those, this is DNN doing this? It's pretty impressive.
Yep, seems like a lot of people are doing that these days, which is great. It's just great to come back to that. So when you release this package and the blog about it, is that going to be on your website?
Yep, they'll be at innosoftware.net.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So our next presentation is about DNN and creating a SaaS solution with DNN, and that's by somebody who's also named Lopez, Mr. Dylan.
Hi.
He's second part of the eye candy, apparently.
So in the name of time, I'll try to stick to the really key points here. And of course, people can follow up with me on Twitter or otherwise if they have any questions. I don't mind asking or answering questions one bit. So this is kind of it's a SaaS product in a very early phase, but I just sort of want to tell the story of how it came to be, why we went the direction we went, and specifically to share some of the challenges that any vendor in DNN, anyone undertaking a DNN project, even modules, it doesn't have to be SaaS, we'll learn a few things, hopefully, from the stuff I go over here. So I'll start with just, I'll share my screen here, just a moment. Okay. And okay, actually, I'm going to break out this tab so it separates my Hangout. There we are. Okay, so does everyone see like a community center screen?
Yep.
Hopefully. Great. Okay, so we had run into a number of people asking for something that I'm sure everybody's been asked for if you've worked with DNN for really any amount of time, which is an event booking thing or registration type of product. And we've built so many of them that, a lot of them were once-offs using a specific module like a form, whether it be data springs or action form stuff, something that built forms out for people. Over time, people would want to associate paid registrations, and then they got more and more specific, and we started to notice a theme coming up because of just our client base and the people we had connections with. Community centers and nonprofits were coming up again and again, and they needed to have an event booking thing. So finally we decided, we've heard this so many times, we want to take all this code that we keep reusing that barely varies from project to project and formalize it into something we could offer on an ongoing basis. So when they came to us, we're ready to sort of guinea pig this client, with their permission, of course, on our new product. And they sort of co-developed in the sense that they were the special client who got all the special treatment while we develop it for putting up with beta periods and so on. And the first challenge was that they had a website. And we're used to selling our clients a DNN website, but if they already have a website, we wanted to stick with DNN for the product we want to offer, but sort of work with what they have. So we actually built this over here. This is the staging version of the product. And I'll show it to you kind of from the perspective of an end user, which would be that what this community center needed was to offer their programs, be it yoga or the hockey for kids or boot camps and so on, in a really usable way that was super tailored to community centers, which is kind of a weekday sort of approach, because people tend to sign up for a course because they're free on Tuesdays, or every Sunday they want to do yoga, for example. So this, as I mentioned, is DNN to address styling, what we would do is just sort of match or mirror the client site, and then we would write links that would send you back to their site, so you could jump between the two by hitting the main SHCA homepage. You see, it would open this up. Nope. Sorry, just a window. Okay, here we are. So if you look here, we built in filters and whatnot. These were all things that were specific to that organization. But to bring it back home, remember, we wanted to offer this to more than one client. So immediately we were faced with a few challenges, which is that if we're going to make this a DNN product, but it's going to be like offered repeatedly as a service, we needed to consider how this could be tailored to additional customers. So tabbing over to these other community centers, you can see the format's obviously the same, but the styling has been adjusted with portal skins. So these actually, I picked these examples because they exist on the same DNN instance. And the reason for that was actually a kind of a question of maintenance and the ease of which to deploy out instance after instance of this to additional clients. Because a long-term goal of most SaaS products is to actually have kind of a Basecamp-esque sign-up process, or Salesforce, where you're able to go to their site and actually launch a trial and it spin off an instance for you. And I point that out because we've chosen to first build up the pool of customers that use it so that we can get more of a real world sense of how they've needed to customize, how one client's need for the product differs, and how you somehow make one set of modules serve all those needs, right? Because most of the time, if you make a set of custom code, if you modify it too heavily for each and every client, you have a situation where your code base is trying to do too many things for too many people. And one challenge has actually been to screen clients so that you don't go and take that client who needs something so different that you'd actually have to tailor your product entirely away from its broad service intent, which is to be a one fit for all community centers. So one of the challenges from this has been those subtle differences that you do need to include. For example, one of these community centers may not need to accept things like checks, or that they have a membership fee every year, but instead of $20, it's $10 for another. So what we did to address that is to stick with the DNN approach and make them all module-based settings that were stored with the module instance itself, so that if you launch 3 portals on a DNN instance, you could drop the modules onto all of those, but then configure them to each behave individually. That said, one has to remember things like the fact that users might register on one portal, and if you make your solution have 3 portals on the same instance, that they do share a user table, of course. So there's some really interesting challenges that come out when you take a product and you've made the approach to be the one hosting it for multiple people, because you don't get that uniqueness of instance where 3 people might all have Power DNN hosting or something and they each have their own copy. We've made it a service that we charge like a subscription fee for. We do the setup, and on an annual fee we keep this online for them. So I'm going to log in, before I log in, just to really quickly show the process here. You can see you can do your filtering and whatnot on the main form. There's little expand outs for specifics. And all of this is configured with a manager module inside of DNN, which I'll log into and show quickly in a moment. You'll notice that we have everything from class descriptions to Google integrated maps, so you can get your Google map link directly to the location, paste it into the product, and it displays it off the screen. We've also added support so custom forms can be put in. You can link off to a specific instructor bio. And I'm going to log into the back end because I want to show off how we did that. It's actually pretty clever, and something I've been doing more and more and more with .NET Nuke modules specifically. A lot of products that I find, in DNN that have multi-module makeup, where they have to basically have a module for, say, sign up and a module for management, so on, is those modules are sometimes not aware of each other. And I find that to be a real shame, because there's, with some code I'll show you, you could do some really clever stuff and make your modules play nice with your other modules. So for example, you'll notice we have the ability to manage forms, filters, categories, and so on for these programs. Well, two of the things we did to piggyback off DNN, the first thing is for forms. The first time you go to manage forms, it just checked the DNN file manager. And what it actually does is it looks to see, do we already have a folder to contain all the forms for this event booking system? And if that folder doesn't exist in the file manager, it actually creates it. You have to restart your DNN cache so it shows up. But then all of a sudden you can see your resource folders and stuff, which allows us to just tell users to use DNN's tools to learn with the DNN documentation. And they've got a familiar interface, and they can reuse these should we ever, have needs to link the forms off of other parts of the site. So we've piggybacked on. It looks for the forms you've already uploaded into DNN, and you can give them friendly names for the interface and associate them to events through here. Another thing we did that I really enjoy is, let's say you have a basketball course. I'll open this one here. We made it so that there's instructors on the site, but we didn't want people to have to do something clumsy to put their instructors up. So what we actually did is we give them an instructor bio page. Oops. And this page uses a different module we made. And the reason this matters so much is because if you look at this module, it's a specific one that lets you upload XLS, and it's preloaded with all of the fields for like pictures of instructors and their write-ups and so on. But we made it so that the event manager was aware of that. So if you look here, if you want to link to the instructor, you check the box off, and these drop-downs are actually using code that searches the DNN instance for pages containing that flexible listing module. So what's clever about that is you don't have to like put hard links in or anything. It's module aware. You can pick the page with that module, and then it even then lets you pick from the data. Because we wrote that module, we're able to then say, okay, the module on this page, let's see all of the specific instructors within there. So if you go...
I got a question from the audience. Sure. Basically, Hans Limping. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but he says he says the way that you set this up as a service, is it still possible to handle payments from the website and also payments for stuff and not for events? And so he says like combining the payment for an event and for other stuff from web shop. So it sounds like he's asking, can you do events and products?
Right, we don't have that capability right now. We do have it so that all of these portals have payment credentials per portal. Like, of course, you'd need that, right, to separate the monies for the different community centers. What we're trying to do is leave it open and flexible so that should we add on, an e-commerce element like products, that we'd be able to like lump it into the same cart. Part of the ability to do that is tied into how we've approached our module development in general, which is we reuse our code as often as possible. In fact, anything that would ever have a chance of being used in another module ends up in usually a core module that's inherited by all of our other extraneous module projects. So it is something we could easily expand into. And we've even left it open in such a way that, let's say we found a third-party cart and we wanted to make them play nice. If they offer any kind of integration, we've left our end open enough to potentially expand that way. But so far, these community centers just haven't asked to sell products like T-shirts or anything like that with their bookings.
So we only have like 1 or 2 minutes left. So I do want to kind of like do a couple more questions. And one of them is for me is what would you say has been your biggest challenge in rolling this out as a SaaS product?
Right. Yeah. So I'll try to get on those points really quick here in the 2 minutes. So having established this, what happened is we had all these, of course, events and so on. We had multiple community centers. We started to notice things in real world testing. Like community centers tend to have these seasonal bookings. Like everyone wants to have their sign up in like 3 days in the spring. And the demand for some of these products is so great that their client bases have actually learned to flood the site and all like register at the same time. So we had some classic, I could call it Ticketmaster problems, which is where everyone wants to hit the site at one time. And you know, the details, the short of it is that you have to make sure that your DNN instance is insanely well maintained. You want a really lean event log table. You don't want your schedule history to be choked up with things. So if you're getting like 404s when search engines are crawling your site, go into your event log. You know, turn off extraneous like database writes, because every event log hit, of course, is a database hit. And if you've got those combined with spiked registrations, you know, these things can be brought to their knees if you're not careful. So we've had to look at things like virtualized hosting elements so that we can have spiking capacity, you know, where it's normally really quiet and then all of a sudden the site's got like 200 users signing up. So that's one of the major challenges we ran into. When you're trying to do this, your margin's driven by hosting efficiency. So if you put everything in its own DNN instance, that's got more overhead than if you have one instance with multiple portals. But of course, you have to be sensitive to things like there's one users table for that DNN instance, even if you have a lot of portals. So you have to be aware of the possibility that a user sign up on one portal and want to use another portal. Interesting things like that come out. Localization, we really stuck to resx files and basically DNN best practices. You want to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, so that whenever DNN upgrades core things, that everything follows suit, and you know, you don't have any weirdness you have to maintain in your code to localize forms. You know, when people want to pay by check, your instructions for paying by check can be tailored to those people. We've really found that portal instance maintenance, optimizing your code, and sticking to good practices with things like what I've shown you here, where you can select bio from a module as opposed to hard links and stuff. You don't want it clumsy for users. That's what we've learned, and we're going to refine it basically until at which time we might automate the trial signups and stuff, so it's a full SaaS product like say a Basecamp or 37 Signals Basecamp or Salesforce, those types of things.
Cool. Joe, did you have any additional questions?
Yeah, I think one of the things that that DNN Corp is, we've gone through a lot of the same challenges, and so the kind of the question I would have is like, what kind of load testing or performance testing, scalability stuff do you look at as you're trying to roll this out?
What we've done is, like, I'll just put various unit tests that will just drive some kind of registration load or, you know, any repetitive action, plus monitoring during real time and looking for patterns, the classic ways, performance monitor tools, so on and so forth. And we found that your choice in hosting, like even be it database and web being separate or a virtualized, you know, type of approach versus, you know, two hard machines, make a huge difference. And I just can't stress more DNN site maintenance. If you're not, you know, if you're running an older 5-point-something version and it's subject to, you know, whatever, there things that a version from years ago would be subject to, then you'll get clogged tables, you get things like that. And I think people don't think about how a slow write to an event log could be what cripples their entire DNN instance, even though their code's perfectly fine. And that keeping it light and shrinking your database files and stuff like that are critical steps. And you're going to have to be kind of Joe IT for a period and optimize the back end, not just your code.
So does that mean you spend a lot of time worrying about things like the registration bots that come by and spam sites and things like that? You pay a lot of attention to those?
Oh, incredible amounts of attention on that. Yeah, for this particular service, the reg and the login controls are our own controls that we replaced the out-of-box ones with, which was actually a coincidence, but it sure came in handy when the spam reg started to spike. And yeah, we've just kept upgrading with DNN. Whenever DNN release critical releases, we stay on top of those and trim our databases. But if anyone wants some tips on that, I'd be glad to share some, you know, pointers with scripts and stuff like that on how to make your DNN instance lean. Because I've turned a lot of people's DNN sites that just arrive on our doorstep at 3-4 second load times down to like sub 1 second just by database maintenance and some basics. Yeah, so that's really been the takeaway, is sticking to the fundamentals and staying on top of like managing your database instance or your DNN instance first, and then worrying about, you know, the nitty gritty of your code.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for today. Will, do you got some other stuff to close us out here?
Yeah, absolutely. So our next hangout, that's the word I'm looking for, is going to be the first week of next month. We haven't nailed down the date yet, but it's probably going to be the Wednesday of that week, and it's going to be Jared Shockley. He's going to be talking to us about using DNN in Azure, so that should be exciting. And don't forget about DNN Connect in May. Keep your eyes out for the news on that. And also, if you want to be a presenter in any of these, and you might have noticed we haven't, we also didn't do a site of the month this month. That's because we didn't have a submission. Interesting. I would think people would want to, you know, highlight their beautiful sites. But if you want to either be a presenter or have us highlight one of your websites, please you know, ping us. You can ping Joe. You can see Joe he's at Jay Brinkman, and I'm at Will Stroll on Twitter. And we'd be happy to feature you in one of our next episodes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron and Dylan, for joining us this month, and look forward to seeing more great stuff that you guys are working on. Thanks, Will, for also joining and helping host this every month. And look forward to seeing everyone in the community.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.